Everyone, please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, so Mike was excused. Anybody know about Brian? I don't see him on the screen.
Mike said he might be on Zoom.
Okay.
But
I saw the
he wasn't
email
sure.
said
He's
he was-
not feeling well, but
Nobody with Brian? It's like 3 months in a row. All right, so minutes to approve for November.
move it, Basile.
Second, Clarka.
Any discussions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we don't have any appointments, so we'll go right into Carl here. You got anything new for us or?
Just some updates on the Cayuga Lake Protection Plan. Seeker's complete. We're in the process of looking for funding on that project. On the county motor pool, the county highway department has been very gracious to the water authority for many years. To use the old motor pool building down there. We're in the process, hopefully in the next month or so, of moving into our building on, excuse me, North Division Street. Our only holdup right now is the electric company, which seems to be a holdup for a lot of projects, but that's the only stumbling block we have at this point. And on the county regional master plan, there's a lot of questions, and I just want everyone to know that anyone that has any questions or needs some time with me, I'm also available. It's an important project, and I'm willing to devote as much time and answer as many questions as I possibly can.
All right, has anybody got anything for Carl?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Kyle, you got anything you wanna?
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay, has anybody got anything for Kyle on his report? You're always the easy one, Kyle. All right, thank you. Gary, you're never the easy one.
Hopefully I'll be easier today. You have my report. I really don't have any updates, unless you have any questions on the report.
Any questions? All right, you want to do what you?
Resolutions, yeah. I have 4 resolutions today. PW1 is authorizing excuse me, the chair of the legislature to sign a 3-year agreement with TK Elevator Corporation for the service and maintenance of the county's elevators.
I have a motion.
Move it.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion. Jim?
Gary, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this. Does it have to be 3 years, or if we're gonna replace the elevators? Is there any?
Well, there's 7 elevators altogether, so it's not just
Doing
these
it.
2. This is for all the elevators.
Okay.
Anybody else? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, PW2.
Resolution 245-23 authorizing the Buildings and Grounds Department to hire a full-time building maintenance mechanic expires 12/31/23. This resolution is to extend the authorizations for 6 months till 5/31/24.
Move it, Basile.
Second, Clarka.
Discussion. Isn't my usual. I know it's going into a new year, but once you get a resolution passed to hire somebody, then you got a resolution passed to hire somebody. Okay. Anyways, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, PW3.
PW3 is authorizing the chair of the legislature to sign a 1-year agreement with Superior Waste Removal for removal of the trash and recycling from various county buildings. Actually, I think it's a 2-year.
It says 2 year, yeah.
Yeah, it is 2-year. Sorry.
I have a motion.
Move it, Basile.
Second, Clarka.
Any discussion on this? What, did they go out to bid or something? 'Cause
Yeah, we went out to bid and they were the low bidder by about some bucks.
it's different than last year.
To clarify that, you went up for quotes and got 4 vendors back.
Yeah, we got 4 quotes.
Okay, yep, just to clarify.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, PW6, Gary called me about, put it on today because it's kind of time sensitive.
PW6 is authorizing the county to enter intermunicipal agreement with the city of Auburn for code enforcement. Until you guys can get a code enforcement officer hired for the county. At least that'll take care of the Auburn issues.
I have a motion.
Move it for seal.
Second, is there a discussion?
I haven't had a chance to see it. Can you just summarize a little bit about it? I saw on your report that you're looking at options.
I can just read it real quick if you'd like.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay, whereas the Cayuga County currently has a vacancy in the position of code enforcement officer, and whereas the county has certain projects within the city of Auburn which will require inspection and approval by a code enforcement officer to ensure the county projects comply with the New York State Uniform Fire Protection and Building Code. Whereas the city of Auburn has a fully staffed code enforcement office and has offered to provide such services to the county for county-owned facilities within the city. Whereas Article 5-G of the New York State General Municipal Law authorizes municipal corporations to enter into agreements for the performance between themselves for one or the other of their respective functions, powers, and duties as a cooperative contract. Whereas the city and county are each a municipal corporation, as that term is defined in GML 119 N. Now therefore be it resolved that the chair of the legislature is hereby authorized to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the city of Auburn for the provision of building inspection and code enforcement services for the period of December 14th, 2023 through and including December 31, 2024 at a cost consistent with the city code planning zoning consolidated fee schedule dated July 1, 2023 to July 30, 2024. Upon such approval as defined by the county attorney.
So basically in layman's terms with what you and I talked earlier when you called me, we have some things that we need to do in the next 30 days. So we need to have a code enforcement officer.
Yep.
This was the simplest, I guess.
Yep.
Way to do it.
This is probably a crazy question, but I know we had a whole conversation about we have to do this because if Cato doesn't have one, we have to assume that or the city will come in and do it. How does this help any of that?
It doesn't help Cato at all. My understanding is, and the attorney can enlighten us, we've hired somebody else to cover Cato. I don't know who that is or how it works. We have to because we have to provide that service.
That's what I'm kind of confused about. I thought that was the reason we had to do it and not.
I knew that Chris was looking into somebody regarding it. Rich, do you have any other further? I know you're working in code enforcement with Chris.
We had a code enforcement officer who
Before.
left employment.
Yep.
We have a contract with an individual out of Oswego County to do the work in Cato. But that person is not available to do this stuff in the city. So
So you
this
had,
is kind of a stopgap to take care of for our properties within the city. It's not.
okay, so you've addressed the Cato issue. This is now addressing the city issues, the county buildings we
Whatever
need in the
buildings that we're
city.
doing
Okay.
within the city. So it was the simplest way to solve the problem. The other alternative would be to go out and hire another code enforcement officer.
No, I understand. I
Go
just
through the
wondered
appointment process.
where the Cato thing was, but that's addressed.
And I would say the last resort would be to let the state step in because
Right,
everything
right.
would move at a snail's pace.
Absolutely, we could do that too. That would require local law, by the way.
I believe my understanding was there's a resolution coming forward to authorize hiring the code enforcement officer, which we absolutely positively must do. Because pretty soon we'll need a code enforcement officer for Senate, Sterling, and anywhere else
When
we
they
have
opt
buildings
out,
and
you mean?
structures. Correct.
When,
Well, no, not if they opt out. But right now, we have structures in those municipalities, and we have to have some kind of coverage for them.
we have our own buildings in those
Yes.
municipalities.
Yes,
And you'd have to have intermunicipal agreements.
we would have to have intermunicipal agreements with each municipality where we have a structure
Yep.
in order to have code enforcement done.
Yep.
And I would propose to you that in reality, if you analyze it, and you live in the city, so you know this, the city has their own code.
Yep.
They have their own codes too, right? If the city code enforcement officer is enforcing code, we don't have any codes, the county. We don't have setback codes, we don't have any of that. So we go directly to the New York State code. So ours is much more streamlined and much simpler. And the question becomes, do you really want to bow down to the city for your structures and buildings and so on. And right off the bat, right now, I'm working on the proposal with Bergman on the mental health building also to try to get some more parking there, okay? And
Municipal buildings don't have to follow code in the
local code,
city
correct.
because they're exempt from local
Correct.
code. Okay.
And I'm hoping, but I don't know if this is true. I haven't talked to the actual code people yet until this is approved, then I'll talk to them. I'm hoping that they'll just enforce the New York State code
Right.
and not necessarily enforce the city codes on us, because that would create a whole nother level of bureaucracy and difficulty for us.
Anybody else?
So there is a group of Cayuga County code enforcement officers, there's 12 or 14 of them. They're all part-time guys that meet every couple months. I think Jay Moose is the guy that kind of organizes it and so forth for them. You might reach out to him and see if any of them, I mean, they all do it part-time. They might be interested in picking up, you know, what, I don't know what the job pays or anything.
Right.
But if you didn't need somebody full-time or some part-time as a gap, or do what Gary says, go to each municipality where we have a building and have an intermunicipal agreement and pay them that way.
That's less desirable than hiring somebody.
Yeah,
Believe me.
I mean, I could send you his, Jay Moose's contact information
Keep in mind,
and,
that'd be great.
yeah,
Isn't,
and see if you could reach out to those 12 or 14 guys to see if any of them are interested.
He was code enforcement officer in Cato,
He was?
Jay Moose, yes.
Did he,
And he no longer is, so
what's he doing, just Ira then, or?
I'm not sure what happened, but that just tells the story amongst itself. So, just saying.
Can I ask a follow-up? So this resolution is coming forward tonight because there's a kind of imminent need to have code enforcement involved in some of the projects we're working on. If at some point there's consideration for hiring somebody, does this tie our hands for the duration of the contract to utilize that person for our city properties? Or is it kind of open-ended?
Well, I would hope we make it open-ended. I haven't seen the actual agreement at this time, but I'd rather have it say it could end at that date, but also or upon hiring of a code enforcement officer for the county.
Oh, yeah, typically we'll have like a 30-day out clause
Okay,
at our discretion. Something along those lines. And the city might want to have it apply to them as well. Based on their, you know, scope of work and various other things that change in the course of a year.
okay. Thanks.
Anybody else? Elaine?
is it wise to enter into this agreement before you know what they're gonna apply their own codes or?
I have no choice, but then I need it right now. You guys approved in October to demolish the pergola at the mental health building.
You're at the discretion of what you need this service.
Right. Right, and theoretically, anytime I've done a demolition project, certainly of that magnitude, I've always got a permit
Mhm.
to do that work, right? And unless somebody here wants to tell me just go ahead and demolish it without it, then that'll work for me too, but I'm not sure that's the right way to go. And you're supposed to have, my experience has always been when you're doing something of that magnitude, you should get a permit.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, go ahead, Gary.
Okay.
Say, Andy.
Never mind that, we
I
don't
was
need
waiting
it.
for that.
All right.
Try, Gary.
Here,
Try.
Oh, I know, that's why I shut my mouth.
Give you credit for trying though.
All right, anybody else on this? Not all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, got anything else, Gary?
That's all I have, thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary.
All right, I think you're next, Doug. We gotta get back.
Good evening, everyone. Just a couple quick updates up in Sterling. We're rapidly approaching some punch lists. So if you're familiar with the project cycle, it's nice to get to the end of that cycle. So we're excited to move forward with that. We'll work with the contractor in the state about the announcing of opening dates, things like that. The Ready Commission wants to be obviously involved in that. So we'll have more information in the near future about a targeted opening date for the facility. We put in footers 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago now for the new shelter on the island. So it'll be nice to see some new construction out there. And I've got to plug, I got to plug Tim's, the Festival of Trees at the museum has over 180 trees this year. it's really impressive to see. So if you have the opportunity and wanna really get your holly jolly, it's a good place to get it. I mean, if 180 trees doesn't help you, I don't know. But they've obviously done a great job. Over it. So, other than that, there's a lot of standard stuff in my, report. So if there's any questions on those.
We got anything for Doug before we go to his resolution? I got. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to bring this up, as I think this is going to be my last Public Works meeting, is Emerson Park and the committee, have they considered in more recent times allowing dogs and dog walkers into that park outside of the Deauville Island area? And I just want to make a plug for it because it's a coded, so it's a beautiful spot and there's so many trails, really restricted for where you can go with your dogs. And I know people go outside of the community to walk the dogs in spots because it's not necessarily accessible. So I just wanted to put a plug in for consideration and see where things are at.
I would say about every 6 months, there's usually a substantive conversation about it at the Parks Commission meeting. It would require the changing of the local law. The sheriff and I have actually had a couple of conversations more recently about it, about leash law in general. Like we don't really have one for county property. It's something that could be done in conjunction with possibly, it would require a law change for us in order to make that change and that accommodation. I will say that the last, I've been here 5 years, and that's 10 times probably it's come up with a substantive conversation of the Parks Commission. The recommendation has always been to keep the law in place. But it's always been a all or nothing. And I think that there's a possibility if the body decided we wanted to discuss leash laws for parks properties or county property, that may be a good stopgap to help park users who want to use the park and are responsible dog owners and do have their animals under control. It probably would help them get outside and recreate in a way that wouldn't be breaking the local law, but it would require us to change the local law too. So far, as I said, the Parks Commission hasn't made that recommendation, but it was, again, the question has always been all or nothing. And I think maybe there may be a more nuanced answer to that as we've developed some of the conversations and questions that we've heard over the past 6 or 8 months.
I appreciate you guys having those conversations and
Comes up all the time.
And you probably hear from the public as well. I would imagine there would be a large amount of people wanting to see that just as much as maybe people not wanting to.
And I think part of it too is not so just all the leash law. It's people need to be able to clean up after themselves too. And that's, it only takes 1 or 2 that doesn't. It sucks for everyone else. Anybody else got anything for Doug? I do have one thing, because I was gonna ask my brother, but I'll ask you since I was just asked this question.
Yeah.
The county snowmobile trail, the part that the Bill Railroad bed. The clubs are the ones signing those, right? Putting up the signs.
The signs.
That's what I thought.
The only signage we have is at the trailheads with all of the prohibitions and rules and things like that. But generally
The
speaking,
arrows and the stop signs, I
directionals are
figured
done
that's
by-
what it was.
Yep.
All right, so you have PW5.
PWF 5 is to authorize the award of the contract for the replacement of the sidewalk at Emerson Park.
Promotion.
I'll move it. Second.
Second, Trish. Any questions or concerns? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Brian,
I'd like to add to my report that's recently happened is our garage manager for the motor pool has departed with the county. So we're back to square one with that again.
Oh, God, after all that?
Yeah, I don't want to blame you, but you jinxed me last meeting asking me how things were going with them. It was the next day.
Wow. Everybody else is blaming me, so what the hell?
This is for the motor pool?
Yes, the motor pool garage manager. Yeah.
That's too bad. Yeah, I know you worked hard at that.
Yep, we're back to square one with that, and we'll keep working with HR and see if we can't get somebody else.
Can I ask you why you left? Is it another job or?
If he'd return phone calls, I could tell you. He just didn't come to work one day,
Okay, thank you.
so.
Anything else? Any other sunshine?
That's all the excitement I have to add. Unless you want me to talk about the resolution that was added at 3 o'clock, I don't know.
Well, you can talk about that in a second. Does anybody have anything for Brian with what he reported? No? All right, now we'll go to the resolutions. And if you want, we can just start with 4.
Okay, PW 4 is just another housekeeping. I have to re-up on the resolution has expired for to fill a medium MEO.
I have a motion.
Move it, Michelle.
Second, Clarko.
Any questions, concerns? Not all in favor?
Hi.
Opposed? All right, so the next one, Brian called me earlier about PW 7. This is another one that we kind of got to do with the state.
Annual contract. Move it, Michelle.
Second, Clarko.
Any discussion? Add to it.
Just that we did pick up 8 miles of road from the state in this contract and about $130,000 on our base payment.
And this is all time and material.
Yes, time and material, same as we're doing with the towns.
Anybody else? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sure, that'll make the state happy. It got done quickly. Jim?
Are all the contracts done with the towns?
Yes. Yeah, we're all good with all that stuff. Towns.
Yeah, so now we're done with the towns and the state.
Yep.
Before snow. Wow.
We've been out a few times.
Well, I mean, before real snow.
Right.
And the only thing the state hasn't figured out yet is they need to give up 34 on Fox Hill, considering the Ira County barn is literally 3/4 of a mile away. And how far do they have to drive to do it?
They're coming from North Victory, so.
It's the worst hill in
It's already the shoot.
county. They ain't figured that out yet. So end up getting a local farmer to pull them out of the ditch or something. Forget there.
The summer tires on the southern trucks, though.
Yeah,
Get stuck in the middle.
just, it's mind numbing. They haven't figured that out with all the years that they have issues with that hill. You guys are literally 3/4 of a mile away. All right, thanks. Anybody got anything else for the meeting? Anybody have a motion to adjourn?
Move it.
Second.
We've been asked if anybody's got a question with that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
DPS at, looks like what, 6 o'clock? I don't know. In 5 minutes, we'll start DPS. Get everybody to stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have 3 excused legislators, Michael Didio, Heidi, and Chris Petras, all been excused, so we do have enough for quorum. Minutes to approve. Have a motion, need a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. I don't have any appointments, so we'll get right into department updates. Ms. Spingler, 911.
Good evening. You have my report. If there's anything on there, you have questions, feel free to let me know. But I do have 2 resolutions.
Yep. They weren't fine. Unless anybody has any questions for Denise, we'll get right into the resolution. AP1, please.
AP1 is to sign a contract, that's to approve the PSAP grant. This is an annual award. It's used generally for personnel, and it will be a very small portion of it will be used for training.
Okay. I have a motion, I need a second.
Second?
Any discussion?
This is the one we tabled last month and you moved the dates out for the 9,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion on JP1? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. AP2, please.
AP2 is to sign a contract with Eaton. This is a routine resolution. They provide the service to our UPS units, at both the primary and the backup, and this is for the primary center.
Got a motion, need a second?
Second?
Got a second, any discussion on JP2? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Anybody have anything else for the 911 director? Thank you, Denise. Next up would be assigned counsel, Mr. Lloyd Hoskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did not have an opportunity to give you a written report because the meeting was so close together. I just have 2 updates. I have no resolutions, but I do have 2 updates I give the committee. Chairman Gould has sent on to me and some other department heads a request that came from the state to put in place a family representation office, model office. It's a 3-year grant, $2.6 billion. And essentially what it would have done is to provide legal representation to parents in child protective proceedings under the New York State Family Court Article 10 and termination of parental rights. We thought, Chairman Gould and I thought it would be a great opportunity to give this to our grant writer, John Evans, which we did. And then John set up a meeting with Rich Graham from the county attorney's office, myself, Christine Bianco from DSS. And we discussed this at length and decided that the deadline for submission was mid-December, like December 24th. We decided, first of all, it was just too much of a rush to establish something like this, get it through for approval. And it was way beyond the scope of, I think, what we're prepared to do, especially with the lack of resources in DSS legal and just the lack of attorneys in general. So we decided at the meeting, all mutual, to not move forward with this grant. The second notice that I got was this week that we did get awarded distribution number 14, which is $262,000 over 3 years for complex cases. And they've now defined the complex cases of those over 10,000 or more. So that'll give us some we have a lot of cases that come in at 10,000 or more. So we'll be able to spend this money up in, no time. So, and that's all I have for my report. Any questions?
Elaine?
This is additional revenue that would come in for those specific cases?
Correct.
And the complex cases have a higher hourly rate or no?
No, same rate.
But they're just, you know, the dollar, the threshold amount.
Right, they're gonna be more of a
Family court.
a B felony or an A felony.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything for Mr. Hoskins? Thank you, Lloyd.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Next up on the list would be the coroner, Dr. Duckett. He has no updates on my paperwork, and I don't see him on the television screen. So we will move on. Next up, District Attorney, Ms. Antonacci.
Good evening, everyone. I do not have any updates and I don't have any resolutions. So unless there are any questions, I can answer.
Anybody have anything for the district attorney?
Yeah, but how many positions are you down now?
Well, we will be fully staffed in early January. So we had someone start last week, 2 people starting this week, and then our last person will start in January.
Great, thank you.
There was an article, I think, in NISAC or somewhere saying that they're leaving Oswego and coming to Cayuga County.
We are taking 3 assistant DAs from Oswego County. One of them started last week and another will start next week, I believe, and then the one in January.
So much of our friendship for Oswego County.
Well,
They gotta pay a little bit more,
Show me the money.
what it says.
Okay, anybody have anything else for the district attorney? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, emergency services, Riley Shirtleft.
Wait, sit down. It says no updates.
If you all check your desk, you should see that I had a laydown report. I was not able to get one complete last week by the deadline. I just want to touch on a couple quick things in that report before we move on to resolutions. And that includes the fact that I didn't break down short window between our last meeting and tonight, but I wanted to give everyone an idea of, first off, the training center. We had a final meeting on design and placement of electrical lights, switches, color choices for the exterior walls, et cetera, today with Bergman. So we should be moving to the final construction documents, at which point we can move towards getting a finalized estimate and go out to RFP after the first of the year. So we've moved in a very positive direction and we're that much closer to the finish line as of today. Information on the ambulances was shared to all of you last month. I really want to thank Elaine for taking, what was it, about 2 hours of time to turn your brain to mush by the time we finished talking about ambulances, to come in and speak with me. I want to extend that offer to returning new legislators, anybody who wants to come and talk to me about ambulances and EMS. I will make myself available to your schedules to try and explain and answer all of your questions individually. But again, that data was shared to you. And then following up previous meetings, I was able to attend a forum of assemblymen last week where we talked about some EMS issues related to training, reciprocity, and certification periods. Those were all things I brought up several months ago. And looking on both sides of the table, talking with another forum I'm part of in making EMS essential, it sounds like that is truly gaining steam at the Assembly and State Senate levels. In the operations period, I did just include information from December of last year to this year, approximate number of times that we were dispatched out of the office. So rather than just a monthly breakdown, that's a combination of all the reporting periods between JPS meetings for the last year. And it'll show you just how much my office is involved on a pretty regular basis in getting out on the road. We've got a few classes going on Firewise. One of them is full with a wait list. We have 17 signed up for a new EMT class starting after the first of the year. We're hoping to plug a few more into that. But does anybody have any questions on my report as a laydown? And again, I apologize that was not out further ahead of time.
Elaine, go ahead.
Just quick, making emergency services or ambulance services an essential service, in your mind, what does that mean? Money will come with it?
Means that it'll be required at a local or a municipal level, whether it's through the county taking on that responsibility or whether that's having to be provided.
So there won't be any discretion in the towns or villages about providing that
You have to
service.
provide for a fire truck. You don't have to provide for an ambulance. And that will change at the state level to say that that is a required service
For city, town, or village,
for local government.
local
yes.
government, okay. And that's not the case now, but maybe.
Yes, it's being debated at Senate Bill 4020A. And that's currently being debated in committee, but with any luck, that'll mean that ambulance workers will have to be on the road as much as fire personnel.
Anybody else have any questions on Riley's report before we get into resolutions? Seeing none, let's see, Jake, oh, yep, go ahead.
The 1.3, okay. You brought up the training center.
Mhm.
If the federal budget passes with the allocation in it, then we'll begin giving $1.3 million of funding towards this. We don't, at this point, though, have any idea what the cost will be.
The prior estimates that I gave this
Yeah.
body were in the neighborhood of that 1.75 to I think it was like $1.83 million total, where the county would be responsible for the match on top of the Congresswoman's earmark of 1.3.
I guess that would be, I guess we'll get to it when we get there, but that would be my concern about, spending down the additional 1 million that we have of ARPA funds, because we don't know what the ask, or what the requirement for the county would be. That's the case, is that
Well,
true?
we knew that in February. We said it was gonna be roughly 1.8.
But there has been no
1.75.
earmark towards that.
The earmark is included, and as far as I know, is moved forward, so long as,
Do you know that? I don't know that there's been any ARPA set aside for that.
there's been no resolution out of this body to
Right.
guarantee funding towards this
Correct.
project's
Some-
match.
Yes,
No.
okay.
But once we removed that was part of one of my presentations, was once we removed the vehicle storage building, which was roughly $300,000 to $400,000 of the cost, that knocked that let's call it 1.75 for sake of argument now, down to 1.35, where the actual classroom and site improvements at the tower will be just about covered in full by the federal.
I guess, Riley, when will we know the actual cost? When this architect stuff, information comes
As
back?
soon as they get an estimate
Okay.
back to me, which hopefully is going to be within the next 30 days as well.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything before we proceed to resolutions? Seeing none, JP3, sir.
All right, JP3 is authorizing the chair of the legislature and the director of emergency services to enter into contracts with the EMT course sponsorship instructors for a period of 5 years. This is replacing, I believe it was 457.19, which was setting rates for contracted instructors. We have a blanket or a template contract that's gone through the attorney's office. We signed with each individual one. We intend to keep a bank of instructors available within that time frame. We don't know who's actually teaching every individual class, let alone in spring or in the fall. This is just updating the numbers. Currently, our lab technicians make less than minimum wage even. And so we did a rate comparison similar to 2019's, where we looked at the Office of Fire Prevention and Control, SUNY Upstate, as well as Oswego County, to come up with some suggested rate improvements. And again, this is just for our available bank to continue teaching classes that are reimbursed by the state for after performance.
Move it.
I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion on JP?
So these rates all get reimbursed by the state once we set them?
And after COVID, we drastically reduced the amount of hands-on instructors, especially for lab tech days. So the actual cost of a course has dropped significantly, and we still continue to see the same reimbursement.
Any other discussion on JP3? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. JP4, sir.
JP4 is authorizing the use of ARPA funds for the purchase of a fire investigation vehicle. We had a fire investigation vehicle. It was a unit that was gifted by the Auburn Fire Department. It was a little over 25 years old. It had serious mechanical issues. It had been a high use vehicle. And we went to try and use it to see if there's any service life in it. We actually had a small electrical fire under the dash. And afterwards it was surplus and deemed unusable. So this is to replace that unit. The one prior to that was also a gifted unit from a prior fire department. A new vehicle of this caliber is about $225,000. I'm looking to purchase a 10 to 15-year-old unit for a cost not to exceed $75,000. And this is for the fire investigation team that goes out roughly 35 to 50 times a year using their personal vehicles for their efforts.
Motion.
Move it.
I have a motion. I need a second. I'll second it for discussion. Any discussion on JP4? Oh.
Is this, I mean, did you discuss this with Lynn or whatever, as far as the ARPA money?
I made several suggestions and we had requests at the actual budget for including this just as a line item within the office budget. It was suggested that we look to ARPA funding between the initial budget conversation, given that it is for public safety. I have looked at other grants. Other grants are hugely limiting on mobile assets. So that's something that we didn't feel would be a fit. We also earmarked other projects for many of them. But ultimately, it was suggested to pursue ARPA instead. I gave a write-up to the ARPA committee related to several of the justifications for this. And I did not receive a response. So Lynn said, well, we don't commit anything to ARPA without a resolution, put in a resolution. And that's where we land this evening.
No, I just was curious if you'd spoke to Lynn, because I don't even know where we are with ARPA anymore. We give it, we take it away, so.
I did kind of get an idea, Andy. I spoke with Lynn today about where we kind of are. And basically after the resolutions that had just passed, we have committed all of the restricted money, so we don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, they're going to take that back because we didn't spend it in the restricted category. That money has all been spent. There's about $1 million left. There might be 200,000 extra if we take back money from the restaurant program or the small business loan that maybe wasn't allocated fully. Maybe the foster care incentives. I don't know. She said there's a small amount of money that, you know, when she looks at this that potentially can come back. To obligate the ARPA money in 24, where are they going to need a contract or purchase order? That would be what would be needed to say it's been obligated. I don't, you know, my feeling is I don't see any need to rush into these particular purchases right now. We don't even know if the training tower is going to require additional funds from us. We don't know about the broadband, you know, technical assistance. So, I mean, we could certainly have time to do this, but I don't think I would be supporting these purchases from tonight. But I'm just only one person.
I have a question. We gave back $1 million of ARPA money for the road project last month, where did that money, is that the $1 million that you're saying we have?
Yes, that's my understanding. I asked her today, where are we with what's left in ARPA? And I don't know that we would have had enough money to do the 2.1, the 750 for the elevators and the road. But we can get a full reporting from Lynn, and I think we should. But I did ask specifically about the restricted money. And the restricted money that had to be used for water, sewer, broadband, that has been spent. So anything here could be used for lost revenue or future projects or end up back in the fund balance. But I think there's a couple other things that might be coming forward that we don't want to end up having no ARPA funds left until we know for sure.
I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong, but I find it rather hard to believe that we only had a couple of $100,000 left before we gave.
We had $3.9 million left.
Yeah.
And then we spent $2.1 million on the road, no, excuse me,
Water.
on the water and sewer project, 750,000 on the elevators. Now, again, that could be where the million is left. I don't know. We can get a full reporting, but the information I have tonight is the restricted money is spent. I don't know if Lynn's even listening. And there's maybe 1 million, 1.3 left.
So just follow up then for what Elaine is saying. I mean, are you suggesting table it until we get a report from Lynn? Like maybe at Ways and Means or something?
Yeah, I'm not comfortable supporting it tonight till we know exactly where we are and what obligations we might be into for next year.
Can you tell Dave, Lynn to give us that report?
Absolutely.
Be
She
what?
might be on. There's no names on there, and I think there's people on. Lynn, are you on? She usually is, but yeah, I'll talk to her tomorrow.
It'll be next.
Lynn and I can talk to her tomorrow.
All right, Jim, you have something?
Well, yeah, I guess I'll wait to see the report because unfortunately I couldn't make the full ledge meeting for a personal reason. But when we had left, the $1 million was going to the Long Hill Road project.
Correct.
That got squashed.
Well, it got put in from the reserve. So he's going to do the project, but it's going to come out of the reserve. That's how the vote went. So it's not that the road project won't get done. It just won't be paid for by ARPA funds.
He had 3.5 in his reserves, Jimmy.
So why was that change made? I guess maybe I'm rehashing history, but now we got $1 million in ARPA, and I heard you say, Elaine, that there's some other projects coming up.
Well, I asked Riley specifically about how do we know what the fire training center is going to cost? He has $1.3 million for that right now. We don't know the official cost. So that would have to be money that would be identified for that project. There was some technical assistance for the broadband work that we don't have any idea what that would cost. The building, we're going to hear about the building on the 12th. So it's just my opinion that at this point, we have a little over $1 million left. We don't have to rush into spending it until we know some of those details.
I'm just gonna say, I have no doubts as to what you're saying, but those numbers don't add up in this mind. So I guess I
think it's a good point. We should know exactly where we are before we.
I think there's $1 million out there that's not accounted for right now. So that would give me pause to believe that there's a little over 200.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jim.
So when we ask Lynn to summarize this thing, can we somehow get a number based on resolutions or whatever? If there was a resolution for something and the money wasn't spent and they've had it for 2 years, what's going on, or a year or something?
I know there's some money left over from the restaurant.
Like 64,000.
Yeah, 64,000.
I don't know what the money left over from the small business
But-
grant was, but there's some, I think.
At this point, we should be pulling all that back then. If
And I
someone couldn't
know
spend it- If someone couldn't spend it in 2 years,
Well,
then
yeah,
I'll put a picture of my wife's in their wallet, because that's why I have no money.
no, if the project's over, you're right.
I think there's some money left over from, I think it was, I want to say,
The small business,
no, that, there was some money left.
restaurant,
over
but only two, the small
Yeah, but-
business and the restaurant.
What about, we also the Youth Bureau, we put out some money there.
Got 200.
Youth Bureau that's designated to the Youth Bureau.
It's designated in a resolution. Well, Emerson Park has had $1 million resolution before we all became legislators 2 years ago. It can't be piggy banked. It's gonna go back, or we gotta spend it.
That question is certainly for Doug.
Yeah, she did say, which we do have through 24 to enter into a contract for it.
By the end of 24,
Or to have a
And it
purchase
has to
order
be
for it.
spent by 2026.
by 2026,
Has to
yes.
be spent. So
Yep.
the contract's only one portion of it.
Yep.
And
If it's all right with this committee, Elaine and I will meet with Lynn tomorrow. I'll have her break it out totally, what she spent through resolutions, and I'll have her send it to all of you.
resolutions designated where it went. That doesn't necessarily mean it was spent.
Yeah.
And that's what we're-
Honestly, I think.
It's been, if it's
on the-
approved by resolution,
Sure things get claimed. and
then she
stuff,
can
but-
certainly check with the department head and see if it's spent. I mean, she would know if it's spent,
Exactly.
if that's okay with this committee, Mark.
It's fine with me, but so that would leave us where with JP4? Riley, are you willing to accept the table until Ways and Means, which is next Tuesday today?
Can I speak broadly about the three because they're all along the same vein?
You have my permission.
All right.
So basically you want to talk about JP4, JP5 and JP6?
Correct.
They're all vehicles.
They're all vehicles.
So just say we're gonna table.
So I'll speak broadly before they get tabled to Ways and Means. Ultimately, all four vehicles were all approached with the intention of either coming out of existing budget lines or the contingency fund as part of the new budget. That was promptly suggested to go back to the ARPA committee. It was sent to the ARPA committee. There was no written response back to that. And if it was you.
We call it crickets.
That's,
Yes.
crickets were what we received. In the information that was shared is that these four vehicles, I'm asking for two used ones because we aren't subject to the same requirements that fire departments are being a county, and two new vehicles. The two new vehicles are trying to be more efficient than the two large blue bombers that we have sitting outside as tow vehicles. Trying to replace the two new vehicles just as part of a rotation, they're already 5 years old, was about $140,000 in an ask, trying to go to some smaller SUVs and then including outfitting costs. That's $140 for two of them. The used fire investigation vehicle, we were looking at one that was 10 years old for about $75,000 compared to about $224,000 to $340,000 for a new one of a similar ask. A heavy rescue truck to try and condense 3 or 4 of these trailers that are all parked outside throughout the county. I know vehicle storage is another element of that entire tower project, and it goes back to the 16 trailers that we operate out of this office. This was an attempt to try and condense 4 of those trailers into one vehicle. I was looking for about $125,000 compared to the $1,032,000 that Owasco Fire Department just spent on a brand new unit of a similar caliber. Similarly, Aurelia's Fire Department has spec'd one that's 1.8 million for a brand new unit. The ask altogether is right around $340,000 compared to trying for an entirely new package of 1.39 to 2.09 million dollars. So again, we're trying to be reasonable, we're trying to be effective based on the use and expectancy of these vehicles and pursue it. So we're trying to be financially conscientious out of the office as well. So if you'd like to table them all till Ways and Means, that's this body's discretion. But again, please bear in mind, I'm looking for $340,000, not 2.1 million, as it would be with all brand new units.
Just a comment, just to confirm my own sake. You initially asked for these in your budget as a budget item, and then you were told it might be better.
The two SUVs for certain, yes, and it was suggested to go back to ARPA. And the two used vehicles, I cannot find a grant for a used vehicle through state homeland security. They typically want new. If they were to provide $100,000 towards a vehicle, you're talking $100,000 out of a 1.1 to $1.8 million ask. I just don't feel that the state would support that, or that the county would support the balance at that point in time.
I think you are correct in that assessment. At this time, I would suggest that we table this until Ways and Means. Give Dave, Elaine, the opportunity to speak with Lynn, maybe find out exactly where we stand ARPA wise, and go from there. If that's okay, I'll make that is that a resolution that I have to say?
Motion.
Make a motion. I'll make the motion.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the tabling of JP 4, 5, and 6? Hearing none.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I think that leaves you one more resolution, sir.
JP ten, this is a no-cost application. Authorizing the application for a municipal certificate of need to authorize for the provision of ambulance services within Cayuga County. Again, piggybacking on previous information that was distributed to the legislature, this is applying for a municipal certificate of need. Certificate of need is something that's required to contract or otherwise establish ambulance services within a municipality. I've had several lengthy conversations with the State Bureau of EMS related to this. And given that AMR is intending to leave at the end of the year, and that's not just an intention, I'm told that they have a for rent sign in their building on York Street already put up. This is trying to move towards the direction where it puts the county in the position of authority to assign blanket coverage throughout the county, or to otherwise overlap where mutual aid does not currently cover, or where local entities are unable to have agreements to provide for coverage. The intention of a certificate of need, at least from my perspective or my proposal, is to eventually contract with agencies that exist within the county already for providing ambulance service. And the contracting process, as we all are aware, can be a rather lengthy one. Do not at fault to the attorney's office. They are simply swamped, but it's just a lengthy process to go through. Part of the application requires a resolution from the legislature to pursue it at all. And once it is put forward as an application, it has to be an expedited approval process. This is also a first step in trying to go to those agencies for tentative contracts to be able to submit it as part of the application. The application needs who you intend on contracting with, if anyone, in order to be accepted and approved.
Okay.
It's okay to blame the lawyers off.
I'm not blaming any of them.
Let's,
The attorney's office has been incredibly helpful throughout this process. This has been a huge amount of information dumped on them as well. CONs are an incredibly antiquated process in the state of New York, but this will hopefully make it a fair and equitable division for all ambulances serving within the county.
Okay, so
Move it.
I have a motion and I need a second.
Second for discussion.
I have a second for discussion. Have at it.
No, go first.
Okay. So, we've been talking about this here and there. When you talk about providing this would assign a blanket coverage, and so we can provide mutual aid where that's not currently covered right now. Can you just explain that further?
So currently, and Denise can back me if needed, but currently ambulances have a boundary line. They have CONs where they are supposed to go. In the scheme of the state of New York, you are supposed to activate only the ambulances that have the CON for a particular area for response, unless it comes down to a matter of being staffed and in service. We have CON coverage because that's also what grants local municipalities the ability to contract and then provide subsequent funding to these agencies. Currently, we have a few areas within the county that have CONs that were, or don't have CONs that weren't covered by anybody other than AMR through their entire Cayuga County barrier, or their entire Cayuga County boundary. Information was given to the fire chiefs, was given to them to give to town supervisors, and in the interest of pursuing and having it be a local issue handled at the local level. There are many that have not followed through where they need to. And when this happens, mutual aid will cover, but there are issues within the billing service for ambulances where if you're called mutual aid, you cannot always bill in certain discretion for that calls. This would mean that from the county perspective, if we're able to get to a point where all agencies are assigned with a contract, whether it's $1 just for coverage or however we want to work that forward, subsidy or otherwise, this means that then dispatch relies on the state policy, which is the closest in-service staffed unit at the appropriate certification level, either advanced life support or basic life support goes. There's no more discretion given to who holds the CON having to be the primary, there's no more king of my kingdom level mentality. Dispatch sends who's closest and in service. It's bird in hand versus hoping that there's one in the bush.
That was a good way to describe it.
Right now, the county doesn't have a CON.
No.
Never has.
No.
And this CON will determine where the ambulances have the authority to go.
It widens it basically eliminates the internal boundaries within the county to
So
make sure that ambulances go where they're.
Because they're going off the county's certificate of need for coverage of Cayuga County, so then they could bill. This is not a done deal then that once we have this CON, that we'll be responsible for reimbursement of all of the services.
You're not reimbursing, you're not paying for services, that's the discretion of the contract. This gives you the ability to contract, this gives you the ability to ensure that people are responding within the county. In order to maintain your CON, you have to demonstrate need. And if you contract with one agency that provides one transport a month, just one, we've got 15,000 calls going on throughout the year. You've demonstrated need, you satisfy the state requirements, and that maintains it in perpetuity after the initial 2-year period. Also within that 2-year period, it grants the county the ability to, whether a study needs to be performed to look at paid services or where the county's involvement is, if any, it grants the ability and the time, and it gives the authority back to the county to make these decisions versus it essentially becoming a bidding war between entities.
And we never had the CON for Cayuga County because we didn't need it because AMR did.
AMR had it as part of a regional application that included, I believe, 8 counties. They are not giving theirs up because it's part of a regional application. However, the state cannot deny one that comes from a municipality. A typical process for a CON for just an entity, if I'm running Joe Blow Ambulance Company, should take 3 to 6 months for approval. For a county, a city, a village that has the true municipal holding, it has to be expedited to a process of a week.
And this will help ensure that the ambulances that are doing mutual aid have the authority to bill for any services if they're billable, and because they don't have to worry about being outside of their CON. I mean,
Correct.
Is that true? I mean,
those that do bill will be able to without issue because they have it for the county. Going beyond 911, I have another meeting on Monday scheduled with Auburn Community Hospital. This will also ensure coverage within the county for IFTs or interfacility transports. And so that way, if Auburn City Ambulance and Fleming ambulances are committed on 911 calls, they could always call up a Wasco and say, hey, we need an IFT from Auburn to Syracuse. That's at a basic life support level. Can you provide an ambulance? And it further expands the ability for everybody to have a fair stake in the game.
And I have a couple more. Andy's first.
So the way I look at this is basically, this is, in my opinion, a win-win because if there's ambulances that are already out and we need an ambulance in a certain area, up my way or something, but nobody, those ambulances that have those boundaries are already out. Now it doesn't matter because another ambulance can come in to that territory and if it's, like you said, if it's different levels of care needed, I mean.
If you're at the Cato Pizza Shop and you're having lunch, you have a medical event and Simvac is out as well as Jordan Ambulance is out because they hold CONs for the town of Cato. And Fairhaven Ambulance is called to come all the way down to Cato and they have a countywide CON, they'll still be able to bill your insurer and not have to worry about anything. If Auburn City Ambulance is the next closest available and they have to come all the way out to Cato to transport you, they're operating within the boundaries because the boundaries just went from the city limits to the county line.
Yeah, so basically it's seems like a pretty win-win for our
And a municipal.
Or people of the county.
Municipal CON costs nothing. A separate outside entity should pay $1,000 for an application fee. This doesn't even cost us $1,000 currently.
Okay. Any,
I'm good.
next up is chairman.
Yeah, I think that'll help a lot of people. You've been having a lot of meetings with the fire departments, the ambulances. Can you explain that they're on board with this?
For the majority of the ones I've talked with, ambulances included, really trying to look at the basis of going back to, and Denise can back me, it makes it so much simpler that if you look at the board at the dispatch level and you say, I'm having an incident here, and you know that a staffed paid unit is going to be on the road to you versus playing the guessing game with a local volunteer outfit, or if another agency is already on multiple calls and has multiple units committed, this knocks the walls of the sandbox down.
Mhm.
And several municipalities have reached out. They're already working on their own CONs to provide that level of municipal funding back to them, at least at the local level. We've had several great meetings with a lot of them. I've had a plethora of phone calls. Conquest did a phenomenal job about this. Others are dragging their feet or aren't even aware that just how real the issues are. And this ensures that the citizens countywide will get an ambulance at the appropriate level as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
You're next.
That was my question, about the reactions of these local both companies, but as well as municipalities with their own CONs. So we would have a CON so that we have the authority that they can, we broke down all the barriers.
Mhm.
So this could put a strain on some more than others, do you think?
Again-
Because they may have more resources. So do you think, like, would this be a strain on Auburn's like ambulance service? Like, what do they think about this?
Auburn's director actually asked me to please have a CON for the county, because that would enable them going to Senate or going to Owasco or going to other areas that they currently, theirs is a municipal CON. Their CON ends at the city limits. They will run mutually to Aurelius. They will run to Owasco, but the billing mechanism, I'm not a billing expert, but the billing mechanism becomes incredibly difficult after that. Other agencies that don't have the providers are another basis of this. If some can't pay for them, you certainly can't get people to volunteer for it. They're going to continue to see the same deals, but it comes back to the first rule of mutual aid is you don't send what you don't have. And speaking as a past fire chief, you can only commit so much. And that strain becoming an undue burden, you're still handling what's within your wheelhouse, what's within your jurisdiction. But the larger entities that are staffed and in service, this will knock those barriers down to expedite service.
So I wonder if the change between the time of COVID to now is because we're talking about municipal organizations versus private. Do you think that that's, because we tried to have this conversation during COVID. And when you said kingdoms, that was the thing. So this is my confusion with the whole thing. And this is another reason, I know this tried to come out as an emergency resolution, but it's so important to have this conversation in the public. So I'm happy to hear more about this here. So like, do you think that's the change? Because
I think
AMR was such a huge presence in their private organization.
Speaking from a social aspect, speaking from my experience, I would say that this comes down to you are always going to have those type A aggressive personalities in fire and EMS. But I think as time goes on, and especially with large issues like AMR leaving, the safety net that was there, that somebody was going to respond throughout the entire county, it's gone. And I think that has opened the eyes to many individuals to have these candid conversations where they say, we only have so many EMTs, we only have so many paramedics, but there are others that are saying, we're putting on additional staff just for our own workload, we can do a little bit more. I think that the kingdom mentality, it'll never go away as long as the volunteer and even the paid fire and EMS service exists. There's still going to be those guys that point at 5 bugles like it's a crowd. That won't go away. But when this conversation happened a number of years ago, looking at it pandemic level and trying to go countywide, this is providing for ambulance service, not a first responder, not a blanket beyond that. This is just saying that, hey, we want to make sure that ambulances will roll from Fairhaven to King Ferry and all points at Auburn and around in between.
And during COVID, it was primarily transport, because we were
Yes.
transporting folks out of state, so they were coming back in time. So in a situation of like Fairhaven, so Fairhaven could just be dispatched wherever it's needed.
Correct.
So Fairhaven, like, okay with that. I guess that's what I'm.
So Fairhaven already gets dispatched wherever it has to
Yeah.
go.
Delayed with-
We're the only ones up there. We go to Wayne County, we go to Oswego County. And I can tell you, there's many times we don't get paid for it. To have two members on 24/7, 365 cost the village of Fairhaven, it's budgeted at about $450,000 in salary. So we'd love to get paid for all the time we get called out for those things. And that's not including overtime, holidays, whatever. Now, we don't make any money to reimburse the village for that if it doesn't go out. So, and that's an awful thing to have to say, but it has to go out. But when it has to go out and we don't get paid for it, that isn't good.
No, I know because of the experience that we had during COVID and trying to get the CON at the time. I mean, I'm for the CON. It's just, I was not for an emergency resolution form because I feel we needed to have a public conversation about it. I mean, we did have next day, I received the emergency resolution. There was the article in the paper that was like, everything's gonna be okay. And, the.
A little bit of
It was a
contradiction.
little contradiction, and so that's why, another reason why, if I went ahead and signed that emergency, here we've declared an emergency, and then in the paper it says it's not exactly an emergency. So I just wanted to have this public discussion.
And I think for purpose of the public discussion, I think that the public message going back out to chiefs also included the information that they still need to update box alarms. They still need to have these conversations if they haven't. But ultimately, I believe there has been some concern that what is the county doing or what isn't the county doing? How much of this is truly falling in our laps versus not? I think the emergency request was more based on the fact that of trying to expeditiously pursue these tentative contracts, at least as example ones to include within the application. So that way it showed a good faith effort on behalf of the county to go to the director of an ambulance and say, hey, we've at least approved the resolution and we'd like to have a tentative contract because again, a number of these agencies are strapped for people and strapped for time. Their directors are oftentimes their primary paramedics that are on the rigs. To have them take hours to draft a tentative or to change a tentative contract, I wanted to expedite that process on the back end as well. And so, but I completely understand the methodology in having a public discussion. And that's why, again, I'll say it again, anybody wants to come talk to me about EMS until you're gray out your ears. I think, is that what you said, Elaine?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Please,
But you still had questions there.
Yeah, I know.
please make, this is not an easy beast to understand.
Right.
I understand that Mark has been doing this for 30 years. Tom, you've been doing this for a long time too. Hans has been doing this a long time. We're familiar with the systems that exist. And so to try and condense that into a Reader's Digest version can be challenging. So please speak to me. I'm more than happy to do so.
Mark, just one more. I think the phrase that it's overused is this will save a life. But in this case, it actually will save lives.
Yes.
No doubt about it.
Yes.
I just want to say, and I add to the chairman's comment, should we, decide to give this county-wide CON, it will make it as simple as if you dial 911, there is an ambulance coming. I don't know where it's going to come from. It may come from the south, the north, it may even come from out of the county. But when you hang up that phone, there is an ambulance coming. And there's a good chance that they will be able to, and I hate to even say the word bill, but they can bill for the services that they're providing. Okay, they will be able to do that. And currently, the way we have it structured right now, some, not all, but some ambulances cannot bill for the service that they're going to provide. And they will provide it, but they can't bill for it. So
I think all entities, for the sake of the mission, for the service of the public, they will do the job. This is just making it so they're able to continue.
Absolutely. And I fully support this resolution. Any other discussion on JP 10? Okay, All in favor of JP 10? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, carried.
That's all I have.
Thanks for.
You
sure
that's
That's
it, you know?
I'm sorry.
I have to get you one last time, Andy.
Here's another half hour.
You make these meetings so long, right?
I'm here to answer questions.
He's earning his pay.
You did a good job.
Just stir stuff up.
All right, next up would be the sheriff's office, or Sheriff Shank, I should say.
Good evening. I submitted my report. I just wanted to highlight one item on the report. Our jail census has dropped a little bit since the last public safety meeting, which is a good thing. I hope that trend continues, and with that, we'll continue to try to, bring some board-ins in from the feds. We've been working with the marshals to try to do that, but we had to turn away a lot of folks over the course of the last year, so I think it's going to be a little bit tough to bring that number up quickly, but we'll continue to try to do that. It has such a major impact on our budget, but I don't have anything else related to my report.
Anybody have anything for the sheriff before we go into his resolutions?
Nobody can follow Riley, so you
I know, he's a tough act to
I'll
follow.
miss you too, Andy.
Yes, sir.
I just want to thank Brian and certainly Heather Petrus for going down to doing this presentation. I heard it was great, outstanding. A lot of people enjoy it. So
Yeah,
thank you for doing
something
it.
to be proud of. Our community with the partnerships that we have, it's been recognized by, others throughout the country. We were able to present about the work that we're doing here. It's a compliment to our team and what we're doing here in the jail.
Good job. Let Heather know that we appreciate it too. Leah. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything for the sheriff? Okay, sir, JP 7, please.
JP 7 is authorization to fill a vacant special patrol officer position at the Union Springs School District. Move it.
I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion on JP 7? Andy?
They retire or something?
The individual that's there wants to come out and go back to court security, but we do have somebody that wants to leave court security to go there, so we're gonna flip flop a couple of people.
Any other discussion on JP 7? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. JP 8, please.
JP8 seeking authorization to sign a contract with East Hill Medical Services to help us implement our electronic medical record system in the jail.
Move it.
I have a motion. Need a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion on JP 8?
I just have a quick question. Obviously, they have met in their own institution, so they are kind of experts in this. You decided to do it this way versus to enter into a contract with Medent, or that wasn't possible for training and?
So we did in May, I believe it was May, you approved a contract for us to contract with Medent.
Right.
They do provide some
Oh, so this
implementation,
would
but
be in addition to?
correct. The challenge that we have is this just is not our area of expertise, the medical area. East Hill brings that expertise and can make sure that we implement that the way that it should be implemented.
Okay, so this is in addition to what Medent could offer, but you need a little bit more time and,
We need help.
okay,
Just
okay.
based on our
Okay.
qualifications. We're not familiar with EMRs. It's just not
Yeah.
our area of expertise. So we're looking for some help implementing that.
And do you anticipate this being months, or you just pick 25,000 or?
I actually don't know how long that will take. I can't answer that. And I'm not sure that we really know the answer to that until we dive into it, but I'm hopeful that we can, do that as quickly as possible, have it up and running.
But you'll give them the 25 to meet the needs, and then they either, you don't need them as long, or you do need them, I mean, how did?
According to East Hill, they've looked at the project. They believe that they can fully implement it with that amount of funding. So.
Okay, for as long as it takes.
Correct.
Any other discussion on JP 8? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. JP 9, sir.
And the final resolution is just a yearly resolution to contract with Johnson Controls to provide testing and service to our fire control system at the public safety building.
Move it.
Have a motion. Need a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? JP 9. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Anybody have anything else for the sheriff?
Mr. Chair, could I just say quickly?
Absolutely,
Thank
sir.
you to everybody that's leaving. I know for some of you, this is your last JPS meeting, but I appreciate the support for all that we do in the public safety sector. I'm sure that I speak for, all the department heads here, but thank you for your service and good luck in the future.
Thank you, sir.
Very clear.
Thank you, sir.
I don't believe in luck.
Okay, I'm looking,
I ain't never had any.
I'm looking for the most important
Motion to
resolution for the
adjourn.
night. All in favor?
Aye.